Welcome to the OhSoSpurs podcast. Tottenham have just drawn to Wolves, and alongside a licensed coach JJ today, we're going to be discussing why are so many of the, should we say, big six clubs and larger clubs in the leagues struggling to find momentum this season, and why are other clubs who were previously deemed as mid-table, who have sold their best players like Crystal Palace, going 18 games unbeaten. Has the league changed, and is that why Spurs are, feeling these frustrations in games we expect to win? Maybe we shouldn't always expect to win. But anyway, how are you, JJ? Good to have you on.
I'm good, thanks, Jim. Yeah, as good as it can be after that game and that performance. It's a weird one to try and analyse and like how I actually feel, but feels like we lost, but we didn't. Which is, let's take the positive straight off the bat.
Yeah, I think we said it before. The weird thing is, like, even under Poch, any era previous to Pochettino, I think you get an equaliser in the 90th minute, you're really happy. You're content. It doesn't matter who it's against. You're going, phew. You use terms like felt like a win. And you should, when you expect, when you're a club the size of Spurs to, beat these kind of clubs like Wolves who haven't won a game this season. You expect to get them at home and win. But also as Spurs, you always have this kind of paranoia that the old Dr. Tottenham stuff, all those kind of jokes coming back. But you said it before, I think, which is, let's take a couple of silver linings. I think more often than not, I've seen Spurs go on to not get that equaliser. And you said this before. Do you want to talk a bit about how you felt about that?
Yeah, I think if we want to be glass half full, and this is, I'm forcing myself here to be this way because I feel pretty disappointed about the performance. It's whenever we have a weekend like this, and this has come up time and time again, where we see those around us or the teams that we don't like, even if we're nowhere near them, dropping points. But we are right up there. We're up in the top three. We see all the rivals dropping points, and we are a guarantee to drop points. Or, as you said, Wolves turn up. Wolves haven't got any points, so don't look like getting any points, and we hand them a victory, and it's Dr. Tottenham and all that kind of stuff. Whereas we haven't done that, right? So we've come out of a game. We've not played very well, particularly in the second half. And we've come out and we've scored a 90th minute equaliser and we've salvaged a point, whereas normally you wouldn't get that from Tottenham. There's a resilience there. There are some players that are really, they're really stepping up in big moments. And Palhinha, say what you like about him, lots of things. He's scoring goals. He's coming in. He's made himself a big, important player for Tottenham. And I don't think anyone would have foreseen at the beginning of the season that he would score as many goals as he already has, or that he's scoring 90th minute equalisers. So, we can take that. I know it doesn't feel that way, but if we are going to look at the silver linings, this is definitely a game that in the past Tottenham lose, maybe not even 1-0. There's a late moment and, they hit us on the break and they hit us too, and then all of a sudden we're completely deflated. So, yeah, I think from that respect, it's better than it probably would have been in the last 3-4 seasons.
And even, I think, over the whole of the game, good sides, when you can't get it right going forward, you get it right at the back. It's going to sound a bit contradictory because it was a bit of a shambles, the goal we conceded. But I think in the large part of that game, we did defend pretty well, considering we were on the back foot for a lot of it, and that back line was under a lot of pressure. We did absorb it pretty well most of the game, and it's one of those moments where I'm not sure what... You can almost see these goals coming, and maybe you see it when you look at it through a coach's eyes of like how things should go. Once I see one mistake, I typically expect to see 2 or 3 more mistakes follow, and that result in a goal. And Spence missed his header, and it wasn't a big mistake. It was just you didn't win your duel. But I kind of felt his positioning wasn't in a position to win that header. And I thought, that caught a little bit off guard there, Jed, but whatever. It's not like it happens all the time in games. It's not a massive error. And then it was the push away from Vicario was another kind of half mistake, wasn't it? It was a save, but you feel like he could have caught it or parried it better. It was another kind of like, it's not a big clanger, but it's a second little error. And you're like, we've had 2 chances now to turn to avoid this becoming a threat. And then the third thing's happen. Palhinha isn't positioned for that ball to land at his feet. He isn't expected to land at his feet, and it just bounces off him again, and he's not equipped to handle that, and it's a goal. And it's like 3, do you call them half mistakes? And
Yeah.
that's but I don't think they would like that. That didn't look to me like, oh, that was terrible coaching or terrible players, really. It just looked like one of those things that a bit more time and you won't see those as much. I think overall we did all right. But yeah, you see those a lot, don't you, in games? Once one mistake happens, a chain reaction seems to set off, and
Yeah.
you're at your own fault to concede a goal. What did you make of the goal we conceded then? Actually talking about.
Yeah, exactly that. So it's 100% the case that inside the penalty area, the more errors they are, this is purely statistical, the more errors that you make, the more times the opposition wins a first contact or wins a second ball, then the chance of scoring a goal rises exponentially. It doesn't rise in a linear way. It rises, the curve goes really, really high, really, really quickly. And so that's exactly what it is. And if you've got this innate feeling that when you see little misses and little mistakes in and around the penalty area, you're absolutely right to be fearful that that's going to lead to a goal, because that is what happens, particularly at the elite level. You get away with it if the other team is not very good. You can make little errors and you can get away with it, but you don't get away with it when you're playing in the Premier League, where, there really aren't. They're very rarely there are like bad sides, not very good sides. So the goal that we conceded, as you say, probably do better on the first contact. But then when it goes through, again, it's one of those, if you want to give Vicario a little bit of, not credit, but, defend him a tiny bit, he does remain pinned by the fact that he thinks that the striker might get a toe to it, right? So he stays in that central position. But at the moment that he falls, and I'm always reticent to criticise goalkeepers because I don't specialise in coaching them. But when a goalkeeper has time to receive the ball, i.e. there's a bit of backward pressure and then the ability to push forward, you have time to catch that ball. Now, I know that that's not really the way that it's coached now. Goalkeepers aren't really coached to receive and catch the ball as much. There's percentage things in there. There's, the issue of dropping it or bobbling it in front of you and players being able to stab it in, all of those kind of things. So it's felt that if you can get distance, height, width, all of these kind of things with and push it out, that's considered to be better. So that's absolutely fine. And goalkeepers come and tell us how you see it. But from that position, when he's got that amount of time, that's not a great push out. And he's certainly got enough time to just have a little look where he's pushing it. Can he push it a bit wider? Can he push it through a gap? I feel like he does. My first instinct is catch that. So again, as you say, maybe call it a half error. And after that, you get a little bit unlucky. The bounce off one of your own players and it falls to a player who's sprawling on the floor from the first phase and manages to flick it back over the goalkeeper. And you're just a bit unlucky. That could have fallen. That could have hit Polina and gone in a different direction and fallen for us to go on a counter attack. It's one of those. So disappointing goal to concede, but for me, a little bit more symptomatic of how we played across the second half. Just that step off it, just that little bit of quality away from doing what we needed to do. We just looked a little bit clueless and a little bit flat. And yeah, everybody kind of 1 to 11 across the pitch looked just that little bit off it, making bad decisions and not completing technically. So yeah, a bit disappointing.
I don't know. We'll do this in another episode later on the week, because people will be saying, well, Siemens as number 10, not as a left wing. People will be saying, oh, we shouldn't have brought Johnson on. We needed that crate. We needed someone who could help with the build-up play coming on second half. There were new people who will also want to talk about the Bentancur and Paulinia partnership. Is that the right midfield duo? There's all these topics of what we could have done, but I think it all kind of, often we get so fixated on ourselves. Like I'm not sure playing the choice between Paulinia, Bentancur, and Sarr was why we're struggling in games. Which two you're picking, right? There's a symptom. There's a reality here that sides that we used to deem the sides you should beat just aren't easily beatable anymore. They're so much better than they were. You've got Sunderland in third place in the Premier League at the moment. It's crazy that you can get promoted and go to that level. And you've got sides like Palace, 18 games unbeaten. I feel like maybe what we deemed as the old way, which was, if you go back a while ago, there wasn't even a Big Six. That became a thing. And the Big Six isn't really what it was, because the Big Six used to dominate the top six positions of the league. But they don't anymore. Man United haven't been really in there consistently. We haven't been in there consistently. It's all changed now. that era's moving on. It feels more like now there's Liverpool and City and the unmentionables at the moment. And then there's almost just like a giant mid-table. And then one or two outliers at the bottom who are just going down, or like the Burnleys this season that we smashed. Man City just smashed, and most people are blowing away. But apart from that, you got 15 sides that are all good enough to beat you at your own ground on their day. They're all well coached enough to know how to protect themselves. Unless you get your proactive style of football perfect, they'll exploit you and they'll grab a goal and they'll know how to defend very well. And unless you can do something special, you're going to struggle. So do you see a bit of that? Is it? Are we overly fixated on ourselves? Is the league just getting harder? Is the standard rising, or is it just changing? Do you think?
A little bit of both of those things. I definitely think, with the money that's around in the Premier League, every single side that comes into the Premier League spends huge sums of money on the players that they're bringing in. Clubs are sophisticated enough to get good quality players through the door. So even if you're not competing for the top names in the top tier, you're still bringing, lots of clubs are working very intelligently to bring in good talent and good prospects, because you can outcompete your relative level in all the other top 5 leagues pretty much. There's a few standout teams in all the other leagues, and they're in the Champions League, and they compete, and that's why British clubs don't win every single trophy, but they win a very high percentage of them, and that's due to the finances there. So all these clubs are doing really, really well, and they're bringing in fantastic coaches. So it's not just the playing staff, the coaches that are coming in. When you look at a club like Crystal Palace, we were talking, singing Oliver Glasner's praises because he's done a fantastic job. They take away his best player every season for the last 2 that he's been there, and he still comes in and he's still performing and he's still doing fantastic things. So great coaches are coming in, really good recruitment, loads of money to get the recruitment over the line. So even if you're not, you might be Sunderland, but you can still sign 20 players. You're going up to the Premier League, you can still bring in 20 players, which would have been unthinkable 20 years ago when Sunderland were, coming up to the Premier League. I just think it is really, really difficult. But the one thing I will say that is a little bit different, and this is where I think we've discussed this about question marks about Thomas Frank that he needs to answer with his coaching staff, is Tottenham being the protagonist. You do have to focus on yourself. This is not the time that he had at Brentford. The mission he had at Brentford was very different to the mission that he's been brought in to achieve at Tottenham Hotspur. And so what we are going to have to see, and it's very early days, we're not saying, well, he hasn't done it by now and that's enough. We're just saying that what we do need to see is we need to see games like this where Tottenham can put it together and they can figure it out to get a positive result. And we've done okay because, as we said already, we got a point and normally we'd lose this game. But what we want to see is we do want to see the onus, and it is on us. The onus is on us, whether you call us a big six side or whatever. We financially are one of the biggest sides in the league, and therefore we should be performing at that level. So the expectation in this game is that we do better than we did. I think we all know, the coaching staff will know, the players will know, we did not have a good game. We certainly didn't have a good second half, and we needed to do better. And lots of individuals across the pitch didn't quite show up today, weren't quite there with us, how we progressed the ball and how we were trying to impose ourselves on the game. So we've got to do that bit, fix that bit and do that better on a consistent basis. And then with more resilience, better defense, you are gonna, you're gonna be in a fairly decent position come the end of the season. And then the next bit to layer on top of it, because there are all these great sides and all these great players in the league, is can you take that next step? And you need a manager who's got that X factor that can take you there and that can do that, because it's so difficult just to say, okay, new ownership model at Tottenham, the Lewises are in charge now, they're going to start splashing the cash. We don't know, we've got no idea, but it's very unlikely that financially we're ever going to be able to compete with the Man Cities and maybe Liverpool with where they are and the finance that Arsenal have put into their side. We're going to need to do it in a smart way. So that's what we really want to see.
I guess one of the things that hopefully will begin to bear more fruit, and it is already starting to bear fruit, is the investment into the younger players. That is a way of catching these clubs by taking 2 steps back in many ways to sign younger players rather than ready now for a player that's got a higher ceiling than a Ready Now player you can afford today. And we're seeing these younger players getting minutes and looking quite good. You know, Siemens is very young. He's still got to physically, you know, maybe mature a bit for the Premier League, but he's showing signs that he's got one hell of a lot of talent. Val's just continuously growing and growing. He looks, you know, he's ridiculous for his age. And we've got some fantastic players all out on loan at the moment in Vuskovic, Moore, Donnelly, and others. Yeah, and there's other young players in the squad as well. You know, we could talk about. There's loads. Even Kudus is still a young. There's loads of them anyway. So there's a lot to be excited about, and there's a lot of players to come back from injury as well. We've got Kulusevski to come back. Muani's obviously just coming back from an injury. We've got Solanke to come back. So there's lots there to say that things are going to get better, more likely than they are to continue like this in terms of struggling a bit with this open play and being on the front foot. But I also feel like because we've been so patient with so many previous managers now, enduring that league season last year, we got the trophy, so it was worth it. But we endured that league campaign. We endured the Conte era, the Jose era, everything post-Poch, basically. And then when someone new comes in, it's completely bonkers in a way to be saying, oh my gosh, he hasn't figured it out yet after 6 games. But it's not their fault, but we're just tired. We're exhausted from the previous 5 or 6 people. And it's not your fault, Thomas. And we have to give him, I think, at least, a season or 2 here, don't we, JJ, really, to show if he can do it. And continues to continue it. Because I do feel up until even the points here wasn't that bad. Like you said, I think we would have lost that more often than not in other seasons. I have been noticing some hard bit. He's going to be focusing on that proactive football, right? Being the protagonist and how we command and control a game rather than react to a game of football. But yeah, we'll see. What did you make of the subs today? Do you think we got them right? There was a lot of criticism on those, but I also think that you can only use what you got, right? We didn't have a fit Kulusevski, Muani, or Solanke to draw upon, so we had to go for others. But what did you make of Johnson and Odegaard coming on as an example?
Yeah, look, you could argue because it hasn't quite worked out and we didn't go and score 3 and turn the game around, you know, with hindsight, you look at it and you say, okay, that didn't really work. And yeah, Johnson didn't do anything when he came on. Odegaard continues to be, he is a really frustrating player for someone like me because there's a really talented boy in there and he is at the moment really low on confidence. He's almost frozen solid by his lack of confidence in what he's doing. And that comes off the back of doing something really, really nice in the last game where he isolates his man, beats him with a couple of step overs, whips a ball in and forces an own goal. And instead of taking that moment, building and growing on it, he didn't do it. Today he had a couple of moments where he did nothing. He ran with the ball, waiting for the defender to give him the answer, give him the solution to what he needed to do. And that is absolutely infuriating with wide players. It's, you are the protagonist. You are the guy. You make this happen. You go in there and you make that defender make a fool of himself. You turn him around. You get his feet in the wrong position. This is you to lead this dance and then see what comes off the back of it and then be confident, be demanding that ball, get it again and again and again. Odegaard's not doing that at the minute. The rest of the subs, we had an interesting thing where Kudus was bouncing across the front line. He was bouncing from the right-hand side into the number 10 position briefly and then over to the left-hand side. He was moving all across the front 3. Again, he didn't have the best of games today. You know, the same notes for him as always. Just that end product, just that final bit. They were actually very good with him today. They won the ball off him quite a few times. He's still brilliant taking players on individually, but that final pass or that final ball and the speed that he offloads the ball needs to be quicker. But then Matisse Tell, let's take a little positive there. Let's give him a little bit of credit because he peeled out to the left-hand side for the equaliser and he beat his man. Lovely, quick feet. He invites his man in, flips it up over him. This is quite deliberate. And then drills one. It's not the best ball, but he tries to whip it in with a bit of pace and a lovely touch from Sarr. So Sarr's now come onto the pitch. He's got himself in an advanced position and he does the only thing he could have done with that delivery that's whipped in. He's now, you know, he's got his numbers facing the goal. He does the only thing he can do, which is a perfect layoff for a player on the edge of the box, and we score from it. Lovely finish from Polina, nice and calm. So all of those things, great. Sarr's on the pitch, he made a difference. Matisse Tell came on, he made a difference. So again, couple of the subs didn't work at all. More changes were made, and a couple of the subs did. And, there were probably people thinking, why are you taking Berrival? You can't take him off. Sarr comes on, absolutely works, did what it needed to do. Berrival wasn't great today. He was just on the fringes of the games. Again, positives, it was really a 50-50 game. It was still really frustrating. Loads to be frustrated about. And, some players you want to grab and really have a conversation with them. But, a couple of the subs obviously helped us get the goal. So that's positive.
Yeah. And we've got the subs, we've got the options now for the bench, which is a new thing for us as well. We haven't had that for so many years. Like even last season, we were bringing on academy products, right? Now you're bringing on seasoned pros who can make a difference. Joe's going to hop on for the last 10 minutes as well, as heads up.
Cool.
He's joining in a second. So yeah, that's another good thing. And I think we've got to also remember that we are playing every 3 to 4 days at the moment, and that is an incredibly tough thing for a coach to have to juggle with, and it's a new experience for Thomas Frank to go through this as well. He's learning, he's growing through these experiences, and it's such a tough thing to get right, because when you're in the Champions League as well, and you manage a club like Spurs that say you can't throw the League Cup, we want to be competing for that. It is a big deal to our fan base. You don't really get any wiggle room to truly kind of prioritize the Premier League. Everyone expects a good league campaign, but they also expect a good cup run, and they also expect good performances in Europe. But so we're almost like pitting our expectations up there with City, Liverpool and Arsenal, what they want their teams to do. But we're right at the start of a journey with Frank and Az. We haven't quite completed our squad build yet, so we're not as competitive as them. And he's only had 6 games with these players, and probably as many training days in between those games. 1 or 2 a week he's probably getting on the pitch when they're not in ice baths and being rubbed down in recovery rooms. So yeah, it's some sympathy there for him as well. I think I feel like we were talking to us like we've been smashed 3-0 when it was a point. It wasn't that bad. It was it was okay. Did you think what did you make more of, the first half or the second? Because I kind of feel I thought we were better in the first and actually regressed a bit in the second. But I don't know if that was Wolves getting their goal and just, making it really difficult for us to break them down after that point. But why do you think we struggled more in the second than we did the first? And were there some positives from the first half that maybe you can take?
Definitely. I definitely felt we were better. We were much more comfortable in the first half. We, without creating really clear cut or, loads of brilliant chances, we did have chances. Plenty of delivery into the box. We know that's how Thomas Frank wants his teams to play. We're going to need more solutions, 100%. But plenty of delivery in the box, loads of kind of moments, like, are we going to get to this? Is someone going to tap this in at the back post? This one smashes off the crossbar, Kudus offside, but puts it in the net. All of these kind of things. We were much better in the first half. In the second half, Wolves did improve markedly. They actually played really, really well once they got their goal, and it wasn't just a case of got their goal and sat in. They recognised that we weren't quite at it and weren't quite on it, and they had a little period just after the goal where they kept the ball wonderfully, and that built up the frustration on the Tottenham players, and it led to Tottenham players just doing things a bit hastily, just not quite completing, not quite doing what they needed to do. Just, we had 40 minutes left to play, but we were playing like it was the last 10 minutes, which is the wrong way round. You've got to go in there and you've got to keep doing what you were planning to do. And I felt that they just nudged us out of that, nudged us out of the rhythm. And they played really nicely. They were drawing fouls. They were keeping the ball, moving it around us, just making it frustrating for us and for the fans. And it's at that point that you need, the team on the pitch needs to take responsibility and just, lock in again and go back to plan A, because there's plenty of time left to play. So, yeah, better in the first half, off it in the second. And yeah, quite a few of our players they just didn't quite execute. And that includes Xavi Simons today. He did loads of good little bits, but, some of his passing wasn't quite on, fired a few balls out of play in the first half. Still finding his feet, still trying to get in and around with his teammates until they can figure out who's doing what and how they do it. And yeah, kudos to the same thing that we've already said. So when you add those things together, it was a bit frustrating, but yeah, second half was extremely disappointing.
Well, there we have it. I would say it's not the time for bedwetting yet, Spurs fans. I think I've seen much more significant turnarounds very quickly across many teams and Spurs over the years. And it's so early into the season. The positives are we're still in every competition, and everyone around us is also having these moments. How many times have we ruled out Man United and Man City at the start of a season and then seen Christmas hit and go like, oh my gosh, someone hit the overdrive button. What happened there? As players just, click into gear, and maybe that'll be it for us. So let's see. But yeah, I think that's it. We don't need to overly dissect it too much. I just kind of say Paulini is dishing out a lot of humble pies around the place at the moment, isn't he? I know I'm saying that partly in jest to wind people up because, like you said, I know people saying he's still not passing the ball forward and creating lots of things, but he is contributing a lot in terms of goal contributions as well as defensively, and he's proving to be a very good signing for us. So good on him. And I guess up the Spurs.
Come on, Tottenham.